Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. Recently, when I reviewed the AudioQuest Dragonfly Cobalt DAC, some questions in the comments asked me about how it compared to iBasso's DC02, which is an equivalent product in terms of concept, but much lower priced. So I reached out to one of my preferred retailers here in Australia, which is minidisc.com.au, and asked if they'd be willing to provide a slightly better price on the product in return for a little bit of exposure, so I could get my hands on these products and do a review. So I'd like to thank minidisc.com.au for helping out. I have purchased these units. They weren't given to me, but they did help out with the price a little bit. And I have to say, the reason I reached out to them in the first place was because I've always enjoyed buying from them. I bought my Focal Clears from them and multiple other products over the years. So they're a great retailer and I do highly recommend them to anyone in Australia, but I'm not being paid to say that. They've just helped out, but I have still bought this product. If you're interested in winning one of these iBasso DC series DACs, stay tuned to the end of the video where I'll let you know how. Now with all that out of the way, let's have a look at the general details of the products. I'm reviewing here the DC02 and the slightly strangely named DC01. Now I say strangely named because the DC01 is actually the later model product. So the DC02 was the original version of this product. It's a single-ended, so just a basic 3.5mm stereo jack versus the DC01, which is a 2.5mm balanced jack. The DC01 also uses an upgraded DAC. Both of them are from AKM, but in the case of the DC01, it's an upgraded and more recent chip that they're using. Now, off the top of my head, I don't recall the model numbers of the chips being used, but I'll make sure they're down in the description below, so take a look there if you're interested to know which AKM DACs are used in which unit. Both of these DACs have a very similar form factor. They've got this nice little fly lead with a USB-C connection on the end, and then a very simple silver dongle there with the jack at one end. In both cases, there's a tiny little hole you can probably see there, and that's where you have the LED light to show that the unit is powered and working. Nicely, iBasso provide in the box a USB-C to USB-A connection. So you can very quickly connect this to a PC, a Mac, any kind of device you like, whether it's USB-C or USB-A. So it's a nice little bonus that they actually provide that. Both DACs provide full DSD capabilities, so they'll do everything from your MP3s through to your FLAC files, through to your DSD files as well. So they're fully featured. They don't do MQA, but they do pretty much everything else you can think of throwing at them. The only other thing that really separates these devices is, I've already mentioned that the DC01 here is a balanced 2.5mm output. It's also got a slightly different shaped housing. It's more of a sort of a teardrop shape that then elongated through in 3 dimensions. And it's also got a slightly thicker and multicolored, if you like, fly lead. It's got a combination of what appears to be silver plated copper and regular copper wires in the braid there. I'm not sure why they chose to do it. I'm assuming it's purely aesthetic that it's using different sorts of wires. I don't think it makes a difference to the sound in this sense. I've also got here for reference the AudioQuest Dragonfly Red. So just so you can see a difference in size, they're very, very different in size. The iBasso is absolutely tiny in comparison to the already very small Dragonfly, but you do have to take into account that it's got the fly lead. Now, ergonomically speaking, I actually really like the fly lead on these. I think it's easier than plugging the Dragonfly into a USB-C to USB-A female lead. Obviously the Dragonfly Cobalt comes with what they call the Dragon Tail that gives you that lead, but I like the fact with the iBassos that it's actually all in one unit. I think it makes it neat and clean and easy to use. The other contrast worth making here before we continue is in terms of price. So the iBasso DC series DACs are much, much cheaper than the AudioQuest Dragonflies. So a DC02, which is the base model, will set you back about $75 US on Amazon. The DC01, which is the balanced version and the slightly upgraded DAC, is only $4 more, so it's only $79 US on Amazon. So straight away you can see there's a big difference when you think about the fact that the Dragonfly Red is $170 US on Amazon. So we're talking about double the price for the Dragonfly Red compared to the DC series from iBasso. With all that in mind then, it comes down to the question of, are you getting what you pay for when you spend twice as much on a Dragonfly Red or even more on a Dragonfly Cobalt? How good is the iBasso for its very, very reasonable price? I thought the best way to test that was to start with a basic stock headphone output from my smartphone. So I use a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. I plugged my earphones directly into that to give it a try. And what I can tell you is that the sound from the Samsungs, they're not bad. It's not a dreadful sound. In isolation, when you haven't got a comparison, it actually sounds pretty reasonable. Obviously, it's not going to blow anyone away, but it's also not offensive in any way either. Moving over then to the DC02 as the entry level, if you like, in the DC series from iBasso, what I noticed was that it opened the sound up. So the sound from the stock Samsung Galaxy was a little bit closed in, there wasn't a lot of space between the sounds. But going to the DC02 created suddenly a sense of space. The bass also got stronger, so all of a sudden I was aware of what was lacking from the Samsung when I plugged in the DC02. So it's definitely an upgrade. It still doesn't create a fantastic sense of space. It still is a little bit of a single blob sort of soundstage. There's some separation of instruments, but it's not fantastic. Having said that though, for 70 something US dollars, it's a significant upgrade over the stock DAC in the Samsung, and I would say therefore most smartphones. So it's definitely going to provide an upgrade. Whether it's enough of an upgrade is probably up to other people to think about. It's definitely better is all I can say, and I guess it comes down to how much of an improvement you're looking for. If a modest improvement, a slightly better sense of space in the sound, a slightly improved bass response is important to you and you don't want to spend too much money, then the DC02 could be a really good option. But if you're looking for really what I would call audiophile sound, I'd question if the DC02 is actually getting you there. It wouldn't compare, for instance, to the LG series phones with the Sabre DACs inside. It's not bringing you to that level, so don't think of it as a product where you can buy a Samsung, spend an extra $70 on one of these, and magically you've got yourself a digital audio player of that level of quality, because you don't yet. It's definitely an upgrade. It's going to give you a bit more power output and it's going to give you better quality, but it is a marginal improvement. Perhaps how I should best describe it is the sound from the DC02 is improved, but it's not sophisticated. The treble's a little bit dry. It's a little bit forced at times. It's inoffensive still, but it's not sophisticated, it's not elegant, it's not beautifully rendered. It's just better than the smartphone. So stepping up now to the DC01, and just reminding you that this is the balanced version, so it's a 2.5mm balanced jack, and I specify that because to enjoy the improvements of this you would need headphones with a 2.5mm balanced connection. I haven't seen anywhere reference to whether it's safe to use this with an adapter that takes it from 2.5mm balanced down to a 3.5mm stereo connection, so I can't necessarily recommend that. I don't know if it's safe and I haven't tried it myself for that reason. But if you have 2.5mm balanced connection earphones or headphones, you can absolutely get an improvement in sound for just $4 more. Now what I noticed as soon as I plugged in the DC01 was a much greater sense of space. So where the DC02 was a modest improvement over the stock Samsung headphone out, the DC01 took it to a whole nother level. So there's a much greater sense of space with the DC01 compared to the DC02. Texture and detail retrieval was better, and overall it was a more energetic presentation with a bit more sophistication. That sophistication that I said was lacking from the DC02 is picked up more by the DC01. Things like pianos and orchestras now have a sense of subtlety to them, so you can hear more of the harmonics through the piano. An orchestra has more sense that it's made up of all individual instruments, just because some of those subtleties are there and the textures are there to give you those cues as you're listening. The bass I found was also better controlled. They're probably equally strong, but better controlled in terms of the DC01, and there's a little bit more power output it seems as well. I would still say the treble can be slightly dry sounding, but it's, as I said before, still more sophisticated than the DC02. And some people might enjoy the presentation of the DC01's treble. It is a little bit sharper than I sometimes like, or drier might be a better word. It's not sibilant, it's not harsh, but it is quite clinical and sterile, and that's not always to my taste personally. So far what hopefully you're hearing is that the iBasso DC series DACs are both a noticeable upgrade over smartphone headphone outs. and I'm comparing this to a Samsung smartphone. I can't speak to iPhones, I'm not an iPhone user to test that, but I would expect in almost every case, short of the LG smartphones with the Sabre DACs, I would expect in almost every single case the iBasso is going to provide an improvement over your stock DAC. For the DC02, the single-ended one, it's a modest improvement, but an improvement. For the balanced DC01, it's a noticeable improvement. It's getting quite significant, a leap in the sound quality. So for $79 in the case of the DC01, it's a really good improvement for a relatively small investment. If you've got a nice pair of IEMs or a nice pair of headphones, it would be absolutely worth putting one of these between your smartphone and your headphones. But what if you've got a little bit more to spend? I thought it was worth comparing to the Dragonfly Red. Now, I specifically didn't choose the Cobalt for this because I wanted something that was a little bit cheaper in price, and I don't own the base model Dragonfly Black, so the Red's the next best bet. So the Red costs about twice as much money as we said before, and for that extra, and also potentially inconvenience of carrying a larger device if you're using it from your phone, for that extra inconvenience and price, what you're getting is a significantly better sound. It's night and day between these. I was expecting great things from the iBasso, but in comparison with the Dragonfly, I was a little bit disappointed. Having said that, I then put it into context because you're paying twice as much for the Dragonfly. It should be that much better because you're paying that much more. What I found with the Dragonfly Red was that the stage was similar in size, so I didn't get a greater sense of overall space, but what I did get a better sense of was space between the instruments and definition in the placement of all of the instruments. Overall, everything was just more defined and more sophisticated sounding when we went to the Dragonfly Red. Now, no doubt some of you are therefore questioning, how does the iBasso compare to the Cobalt? Obviously the Cobalt's better than the Red, therefore the Cobalt's better than the iBassos, but to put this into really clear perspective, so you've kind of seen all four tiers here, the Cobalt provides an overall better presentation in almost every way. And interestingly, I'm saying almost here because the Cobalt has slightly bigger presentation in terms of bass, that is, than the Dragonfly Red. And what that means is that the bass from the DC01, the balanced version, is probably a little bit tighter and cleaner than the bass from the Dragonfly Cobalt. Having said that, everything else about the Cobalt's presentation is better. It's got better space, better texture, better detail retrieval. The treble is more refined but without losing any, so it's not rolling off or anything like that. It's just cleaner and smoother sounding treble. So in every single way, except potentially that bass being a little bit looser on the Cobalt, it's by far the superior product in this series of smartphone type DACs. Having done all of this comparison, if you were to say to me today that you've just bought a smartphone and you're looking for an external DAC to improve your sound, I would definitely recommend the iBassos if you can't spend more. So if your budget's capped at $100, definitely look at the iBassos. They are going to be an improvement. They're going to be a good improvement over your phone. But if you can spend the extra, you're absolutely going to get rewarded by going to something like the Dragonfly. I'd also highly recommend that if you can go for the balanced option, if you're in a position where you've got that cable available to you, that it's definitely also worth going for that extra $4 to get the balanced version DC01. It's without doubt worth more than $4 more than the DC02. It's better in every respect, so long as you've got that balanced connection. Now, if you'd like to win one of these, both the iBasso DC01 and DC02 will be getting given away, and the giveaways go to patrons of Passion for Sound. We've already had one giveaway that happened at the very end of 2019. That was the Massdrop X Aorist R2R DAC. That went to one of our patrons. And if you'd like to find out how you can win one of the iBassos or other products in the future that I've reviewed here on the channel, just jump down below, click through the Patreon link and have a look at the tiers available there. In the meantime, I hope you found this review useful. If you did, please subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell if you'd like to hear about future reviews when they come out, and I look forward to seeing you here next time on Passion for Sound.